So, ladies and gentlemen, the time is 1:30. It's now time to begin FlexRICAN's first online training webinar. So I want to welcome everybody who has made it here to Grenoble in person, and also everybody who is listening at home on the screens. The FlexRICAN project covers the topic of flexibility in energy management for research institutions through the use of renewables, waste heat recovery, and energy storage. Just for those who are new to the project at home online. So my name is Mark Unas, and I have the honor to chair this session. You will maybe ask yourself what FlexRICAN means. So FlexRICAN means flexibility in research institutions for global carbon neutrality. And it's a big question now. What does flexibility mean? Yeah, flexibility, we already discussed in the last days, as a term, covers a wide range of aspects. And we will highlight in this session now 4 different of the many aspects that the term flexibility covers. So we aim to show in this project that flexibility is more than just efficiency. And we even cover some sociological aspects. So there are even sociology PhD thesis written about the project. So I want to show this slide about FlexRICAN. The FlexRICAN project aims to revolutionize energy usage within European research infrastructures using 3 prominent institutions, uniting 3 prominent institutions, the European Spallation Source, the Extreme Light Infrastructure, and the European Magnetic Field Laboratory. We endeavor to optimize energy efficiency, to enhance resource efficiency, and to reduce environmental impacts across these research institutions through the collaborative efforts of beneficiaries such as the Centre National de la Recherche Scientifique, the Helmholtz-Zentrum Dresden-Rossendorf, the Radboud University, and key industry players such as Alfa Laval and Energy Pool. So we are very grateful, the entire consortium, for the funding that is provided by the European Commission's Horizon Europe program, underscoring its commitment to advancing sustainable energy solutions. So how will we now organize this FlexRICAN training? Today, you witness our first webinar, which will feature 4 talks. We see this webinar partly as a trial. There will be more to come, and we want to improve for the upcoming webinars. Therefore, we ask you for your feedback. You will receive a survey survey after the webinar, and we thank you already now for sharing your thoughts with us. In the end of today's seminar, there will also be a wrap-up session where we can also collect first feedback. Now, today's agenda consists, as I said, of 4 talks. The first talk will be on energy flexibility or electrical energy flexibility given by Justine Bastard-Rosset and Marion Perrin, who work for Energy Pool in the, I may say, really beautiful Bourget-du-Lac. Then we move on to renewable energies and how they can be applied to research infrastructures. This will be brought to us by Diego Herrera Ruiz from ESS, the European Spallation Source in Lund, Sweden. And then we move on to heat storage and waste heat recovery, presented by us by François Debré of EMFL LNCMI Grenoble. Finally, we hear about electricity storage, presented by Václav Bernáček of ELI ERIC of Prague, Czech Republic. So this webinar will be recorded and will later be available on our YouTube channel for your convenience. If you did not understand something right now, you can always look it up again, and you can also spread the word to your colleagues. Generally, I advise you go to our webpage for further information on the project. We thank you now for the questions that you sent already with your registrations, and if you have further questions after the talks, please just ask in person or use the Zoom comment function. And now we will move on to the first talk given by Justine Basta-Rossé, together with Marion Perrin by Energy Pool.
To present it will be first Justine and then me, because the one who's been working is Justine, and she will be presenting me. As a short introduction about flexibility, François Debré here used to say we do not know what flexibility is, and therefore we propose one way of looking at flexibility. It's the point of view of the grid, who needs or that needs flexibility to be permanently balanced. Within FlexRICAN, we address 3 ways of making an infrastructure more sustainable. One way is for the infrastructure to consume less energy, and this is what we call energy efficiency, and this is not flexibility. The second way is to consume better energy, one energy that is having a lower CO2 content. So it's producing locally renewable energy or consuming the renewable energy at the right time. And this is what is really in focus when we speak about flexibility. It's to consume the energy at the right time, when it is available, or when the system needs help. And by being flexible, you can both decrease your CO2 footprint, you can decrease your energy bill or add income on top of the energy bill, and you can support the grids and minimize the need of grid infrastructure by making yourself flexible.
Can you all hear me? Okay. So first, before explaining exactly what flexibility is, we're going to go back a bit and explain a bit how does the grid work and why exactly does it need flexibility. So again, this is a focus on electricity flexibility. In the electric grid, at any given moment, you need to have an equilibrium between supply and demand. This is a constraint, it doesn't work. So, which means you need your production and your importation in the country to be equal to the consumption and the exportation. The grid must be balanced at all times, or else it does not work. So for that, you have different level of responsibility to keep that balance in the whole grid. So I'm going to take the example of France to illustrate it a bit, but it works similarly in most countries. Overall, at the continental at the continental level, you have what we call a synchronous area. So it's an area of interconnected grid that work on the same frequency, at the same time, more specifically. In Europe, you have a main continental area that covers France, Germany, up into Eastern Europe. So Czech Republic and Hungary is also taken into it. Sweden is on another synchronous area with the Nordic countries. If an imbalance occurs in this area, any countries that is in this area is going to be impacted. So, but since it's a very big area, you cannot have just one person maintaining the balance overall. So each TSO, which are transmission system operator, are responsible for balancing their own network. Most countries only have one TSO. For example, in France, it is F2. Some countries have more than one. It's the case in Germany. They have 4 TSOs. And most of the time, it is a public service because it comes with the network economy of it. But again, a country is a big place to maintain a balance. So usually the TSO introduce balance responsible parties. So those parties are responsible to manage an equilibrium on a smaller portfolio, if you will. they have different assets and they need all of their own assets in their portfolio to be balanced, to have the TSO balance the whole grid. Each player, every asset needs to be attached to a balanced responsible party, and they have a financial incentive to be balanced and penalties usually when they're not balanced. So how exactly do the balancing work and how is it done? You have a different temporality, if I will. On long and medium term and on short term, it's the balanced responsibility parties that take care of the equilibrium. So on the long term, they balance through using future and term markets. An example is through X. And on the more short term, so day ahead and intraday, they use the spot or intraday markets. So an example of a platform is FX Spot. So they use these markets to balance their perimeters, but at more real time, let's say 2 hours before real time, the TSO is going to take that job. So the transmission system operator is going to manage the balancing after about 2 hours before the real time, the delivery time, in a way. Through using balancing markets, where they procure balancing capacity, balancing energy, and through using ancillary services, which we're going to go over very quickly, which are services that are specifically tailored to manage the frequency of the network. And this is all to help the system operator balance the power system. So I gave again the example of RTE, but it is also the job of Svenska Kraftnät, I think, in Sweden, Mavir in Hungary, and I think it's Czech in Czech Republic. They all have that same job to balance the network on the short term. So exactly what is flexibility and why do we need it? So Marion already introduced the first definition. So we can kind of separate production side flexibility and consumption side flexibility, but technically they kind of all work the same way in the end. So for production side, for production asset, its flexibility, its capacity to increase or decrease its production to answer to different signals. That can be market signals, the market price, system signals, if the system needs, through, for example, the balancing market. And historically, production units are mainly used to procure flexibility in the system. Now we see more and more demand-side flexibility that is appearing, which is kind of the same definition. It's the capacity of a consumer to increase or decrease its consumption to answer to system needs or to market price. This is also called demand response. This is a bit different than energy efficiency, which is more of a lowering your consumption for same output, if you will. So this demand response can be done through peak shaving, which is you just curtail your peak load. It's quite simple. You can do peak shifting, which is reporting your load at another time. So you do not consume when the network needs you to not consume, and you will consume at a later time when the network doesn't need you to stop your consumption. And you also have valley filling, which happen mostly in countries that have assets that are called must runs. So it's when the consumption is too low for certain production assets, you tend to encourage the consumption to go up a bit. In France, it is mostly the case through the fact that nuclear does have must run parts, so it can happen too. Why exactly do we need demand-side flexibility now? So with the energy transition, we see an increase in renewable energy production and an electrification of uses in industry and in transportation. This leads to new challenges for the system. You have a decrease in production flexibility because most renewable energy are not very flexible. Mainly solar and wind production can be not very flexible, And you also have with the electrification an increase of electricity consumption, especially during peak hours. So what exactly does it look like for flexibility? What is the effect? So I'm going to take the example of a load shedding event. I have on top the electricity consumption, and on the bottom the value production. You can see, for example, for an industry, the output they do, like the production they manage to have. So if you do a load shedding, during a load shedding event, for example, you will lower your consumption, so you will lower your input, so you will lower your value production. In this example, it is very linear, it does follow perfectly, but the truth is, depending on the asset you have, sometimes curtailment, a load shedding can have longer effect than just the time of a load shedding. If we look at more of, let's say, indefinite time, you have, for example, this cycle, which is the normal cycle, let's say, for an industry. So you have your consumption that do a cycle, and you have your production below. You decide to do load shedding this time, so you will not consume this part. So on your production, you will not have this production because you did not consume. Now, this is the main effect. You have a loss of production. But you can also, sometimes you cannot just go back to your usual schedule consumption. So you're going to shift a bit your consumption throughout the day. And this can have another effect on your production, which is reorganization, the need to reorganize and to organize everything around that load shedding event. So this is for load shedding. Load shifting does mean that you're going to shift your consumption, so what you did not consume, at another time to, in a way, report it, report your consumption. So this is an example of, for example, what you expect. So let's say you are an industry that closes on the weekend. You consume mainly, you have a stable consumption throughout the week, and then the weekend you just stop. You're going to shed your load here, but you're going to want to still produce your expected production. So you're going to consume at a time where you were not supposed to consume. This may not lead to loss in production, but usually you need to have a bit of a rescheduling and reorganization. Another final effect is, so I presented most in the case of curtailment, load shedding, but also there is a type of flexibility that you can have, which is linked to continuous frequency adjustment. So this is not really just you, oh, I'm just going to stop consuming right now. It's more of a, let's say, I have the frequency, I have the information about how the frequency is doing, and I'm going to adapt on real time, usually, my consumption to how the frequency is doing, so that you can help it go toward your output 50 Hz. So this is a continuous service, we do it all the time. You have a set point, which is usually the consumption when the frequency is, let's say, perfect. And you have a centered load around that set point. This is the sort of modulation that is used in what we call FCR, which is Frequency Containment Reserve, which we're going to see a bit later. It's an ancillary services, and it's used to maintain frequency in the network. So what are the different costs and benefits of flexibility for consumption asset? Well, you can have a loss of production, you can have a loss of value creation, you have a loss of output in a way. You can have short and long-term need for a reorganization of the whole consumption, the whole production. And you also have potential investment to make, which are equipment. If you're going to do frequency regulation, you need to have an equipment that can follow the frequency on the grid. You also need measuring and communication device if you're going to, let's say, sell your flexibility to the grid. And it does have some benefit. It can decrease the electricity bill if you do load shedding, mostly. If you shift the entire consumption, then you can still decrease the electricity bill, mostly based on tariffication. You might consume at a time where it's cheaper to consume. You can have revenue from your flexibility, which is through the balancing market, for example. Usually when you provide a service to the grid, they incentivize you to provide it, so you can have a revenue from that. And you also can possibly increase CO2 savings by, for example, being an alternative to, let's say, starting another gas plant to cover the consumption. So how exactly have the flexibility needs evolved throughout, let's say, the years? So as we can see in Europe, those are all from the NSOE, if I recall correctly. As you can see in Europe, you have more and more renewable that is in the electricity mix. You have less nuclear, fossil fuel. You still have a good part of dispatchable renewable, but you have more and more variable renewable that are not usually a source of flexibility. And it is expected to go even up in the later years, which does have an effect on the flexibility the grid needs. As you can see, you do have an increase in flexibility needs, whether it's a bit short term or also long term. I'm going to show you a bit of this curve. So this curve, very specifically, is it's a bit an old curve, but we still see the same thing happening now. This is the residual demand from solar production. So it is a bit to show how you need to shift your consumption with flexibility. So we see more and more this form, which is sometimes called the duck curve, because it looks like a duck. And you see that with the increase in renewable, you have that residual demand that has this specific form, and that needs to be answered through dispatchable production. So you tend to have less and less production during consumption, during the day, which is the peak production, but you also tend to have more and more consumption during the evening and a more rapid peak, if you will. You have that ramp that is increasing, and that need to, with the increase of this ramp, you need to have more and more flexible assets that are able to either produce electricity or lower their consumption very, very quickly. So this is an example of why exactly do you need flexibility on the network. Now I'm going to go over very quickly the difference between implicit and explicit flexibility. So implicit flexibility is something which is price-based. It modifies the consumption through the use of tariffication and price signals. Main example is if you have an electricity contract, you may have access to peak off-peak hour to maybe incentivize you to consume at some time rather than other. This is what implicit flexibility is. You have also explicit flexibility, which is incentivized based, and that modifies the consumption through incentives, through a signal, and most of the time you have markets for those. These are more programmed, they tend to be contracted, they tend to be a bit more, let's say, certain. So these are different type of flexibility that also have different uses, as we can see. So I'm going to try and break it down a bit. On top, you have the price-based demand response, which is the implicit flexibility, and on the bottom, you have incentivized-based demand response, which is the explicit flexibility. And you have that triangle that show the time of the planning and operation. So as you can see, you usually use price-based. I'm going to go over which of these are a bit later, but you can usually use them on a long-term planning through month. Usually the time of use rate, which are the off-peak peak hours, are usually used to provide flexibility on the long term. And you can have sometimes a type of implicit flexibility that can go toward ahead dispatch and planning. And then you have the explicit flexibility that can be used on a more real-time basis. So you also have some programs that are used on the long-term planning, but you also have programs that are used very, very close to real-time at a time where implicit flexibility cannot answer to needs, to system needs. So they serve different purposes. I'm going to let my own present this.
Yeah, on here, two slides. To make it easier, we see the implicit flexibility as being the means to decrease the electricity bill. Means it's what you do behind the meter in order to optimize your energy bill, and it's up to you. You are not obliged to do that. You do it if you want. And then you have the explicit flexibility. This is something where you engage on providing a service, and you will be rewarded for that. And this is money that you get on top of your bill. So this is an additional income. And this is what is making more clearer the difference between the implicit word and the explicit one. So this is how the grid operators or the grid organizers are seeing flexibility. If you ask the Commission de Régulation de l'Énergie in France, they have the clear definition of that, explicit and implicit flexibility. Now, from a more sociological perspective, we are speaking within FlexRICAN about direct flexibility. This is the one that is automated and where the user is not needing to change or to act. And there is the indirect one where the message goes to the user and the user changes its behavior and then modifies the consumption curve. And this is why we wanted to represent the different perspectives. They are either systemic or more sociological. And this is the basis for the discussion with François and with the teams within FlexRICAN about how we classify these. And so we have a 4-segment quadrants. It's like in the electricity where you have the power, the active power and the reactive power. So we work in a 4 quadrants: implicit and explicit, direct and indirect. And for each of these types of flexibility, we have some examples. And Séverin, who's doing his PhD thesis and starting it right now, this is a proposal for the basis of discussion about the definitions of the different categories of flexibility, so that we share a common language in the project.
So, in order to drive that point a bit, I'm going to give you a few examples of implicit first-dimension flexibility. So again, everything is a question of timeline. You have implicit flexibility that is mostly going to be used on long-term planning of the system, and you are implicit flexibility that can provide a bit shorter-term planning, not short-term like a few minutes before the real time, but usually a day ahead. So the most used type of implicit flexibility is the time of use one. So it's just having a different tariff, a different price for different periods. So you just have a different tariff if you, for example, it can be from season. You may have a different tariff in winter or in summer. You can have a different tariff if you consume throughout the week or throughout the weekend. And you also have different tariff, whether you consume, for example, during the afternoon or during the evening. These are the off-peak hours that you can usually see. This is the most often used, mostly because it's the easier to implement. The more you go toward there, the more you need to have equipment, the more it's also complicated to put into place. The second, which is more of a middle ground, is the critical peak pricing. Those are usually a tariff where you have like a base tariff, and sometime, usually a day beforehand, your supplier will indicate to you, hey, tomorrow is going to be a very stressful day for the grid, please lower your consumption. And this specific day that is going to be a stress event is going to cost you a lot more than another day if you consume the same energy. And thirdly, you have the real-time pricing, which is a price that is usually indexed on the spot price. An example where this is put into place is in Spain, where they do have a tariff which is both indexed on the day-ahead spot and on the long-term market. This is rarely used and a lot harder to implement because you need to have, first of all, consumer that follow that. And also you need to have the equipment that is able to calculate in a very, very detailed way when you consume your electricity. So this is an overall picture of the main implicit demand flexibility program you're going to see. Most of them, again, are done through tariffication. Another example, this time for explicit demand flexibility. So you modulate your consumption through explicit mechanism. I will try to go over them very quickly. I think they have the slides if you want to read all that. So you can find, for example, in certain countries, direct load controls. So it's just automatic shedding. An example of that you can find in some system in America. They implement AC that can be shed very easily during summertime because they have a lot of constraint on the grid during summer. You have ancillary services, which is the one I talked about earlier. This service is made to maintain and restore, in the case of the frequency of the network so that the network works properly. You have emergency DR program, which can be usually used after, during non-stress events. They're used in major events, so they are mostly used during, for example, in France, winter peak, because we have a lot of consumption through winter. But if I would take the example of America, they would be mostly used in summer because most of them, their peaks, are linked to high temperature. You have curtailable load, which is just some usually industry that are able to curtail their load just like that as an alternative to increasing generation. You have demand bidding, which is a program that will give access to a demand asset, to a consumption asset, to the spot market. And then you have capacity mechanism, which are way more long, which are usually longer term mechanism. They are put into place to contract enough resource, enough capacity in a country to answer to demand throughout the year. Usually, those are not specific to consumption and to demand response. Usually, you have a lot of capacity mechanism where you have both demand and production. So I'm going to do a bit of a focus on ancillary services. So again, those are the services that serve to maintain and restore the frequency of the network. I'm going to do a bit of an animation here. This is the European frequency, which is at 50 Hertz. And we're going to see what happens when you have an imbalance between generation and consumption. So let's say we have a big imbalance and the frequency dropped very suddenly. The first services that is going to be used is the F0 service, which is the primary reserve in a lot of countries. These services serve the role of containment. So what it does, it just go up to approximately the variation that happened, the imbalance, just so that the frequency on the network just stop moving. So this is what is happening here. This particular reserve is a very quick reserve. It needs to be there. Usually, you need to react in less than 5 seconds and need to be completely there in 30 seconds. Then, once this has contained the frequency variation, you have another reserve that is used, which is called the AFRR, which is the automatic frequency restoration reserve. This needs to be fully up in 5 minutes, and the job of this reserve is going to restore the frequency toward the normal frequency. So as you can see, you have the beginning of this, and the frequency is going to go up toward the 50 Hertz. Sometimes the AFRR is not enough to make the frequency completely go back. And then you have the MFRR and RR, which are going to be used. So the MFRR is the manual frequency restoration reserve. It needs to be available in 30 minutes. And you have the RR, which is the replacement reserve that is there on more long-term events. That is going to be there in 30 minutes. Those are, at least in France, procured through the balancing market. And all of this, the 4 type of reserve, are European standards that you usually find in most European countries. You find them in France, you find them, I think it's at the area in Czech Republic. You also find them in Sweden, again, except the replacement reserve. Those are European standards, they exist in most countries in Europe. As I say, they have different timeline. Again, I'm going to repeat myself, sorry. Those are European standards that are used throughout at least the synchronous area. They're also used sometimes in Nordic countries. So Nordic countries also have their own market for those ancillary services and MFRR. The map is not completely accurate. It separates the Baltic country to the frequency to the continental area. The Baltic area doesn't exist anymore. Now they're synchronous with the continental Europe. Okay. So very quick to summarize all this. Different assets cannot usually participate in all those services. It's going to depend on, well, what they can do, and on a lot of technical constraints. So I try to give you a bit of example with different assets, where they can participate, what they can do. So the first one would be an industrial asset that can switch off with 30-minute notice and that would not want to be activated too often. This one, for example, would participate in the replacement reserve, which is the 30-minute activation time reserve, which is, since also it's a replacement reserve, is also a reserve that is normally not used too often. Now, the second example would be an industrial process that accepts a certain load variation and that can be controlled in a few seconds. This one would participate mostly in the frequency containment reserve, but he could also participate in the AFRR, so the automatic frequency restoration reserve. Our third example would be a battery with a 2-hour energy stock. This one could again participate in the 2 first example. He could not participate, for example, in MFRR, which does need to have a 4-hour response time, usually, as a minimum. And then you have the last example, which is a large battery with a 8-hour energy stock, which in that case, since it can answer very rapidly, but also for a very long time, can participate in everything. Of course, it can also participate in the spots, I just did not show it. So I'm going to end very quickly, I think, with a few summary of what you can find in different countries. So I'm giving the example of France, but also I will give you the example of Sweden. So in France, you have those four main reserves that I presented to you. They're not called FCR, FRR. They're called the primary reserve, the secondary, and you have the fast reserve and complementary reserve, but those are the same standard that I presented to you. But you also have different programs that are happening. You have interruptibility, which is an interruptible load that is that comes as an emergency measure in France. It's also a form of what we call a strategic reserve because it is capacity that is contracted before a year to be sure to answer to major events. You have what is called the AOFD, which is a complement of revenue for the capacity market. So the capacity market is, again, the market where you will contract capacity. This is a market that is common for both consumption and production. I'm not going to go over it because we don't have the time. And lastly, we also have what we call the NEBET, which is a demand bidding program that allow access to spot market to their asset. Now we can do the same exercise for Sweden. They, again, do not have a replacement reserve, but we do find those again. The first one is not a European standard, but it's what is called FFR, which is a faster service than FCR and is used specifically in Nordic countries because they tend to have a lower inertia on the grid, so they have a harder time maintaining their frequency. So they have a very, very quick service. They also separated their FCR between two different things, which is a normal and a disturbance. The normal is similar to the European standard, and the disturbance is used in the case of a very big frequency variation. And then they also have a strategic reserve, which is going to end soon, and again, is just contracted capacity in case of needs. I think it's all.
Very much.
Thank you.
So thank you too. So now is the moment where we can ask you some questions. So we can both ask in person here in the auditorium and online. If somebody wants to speak online, please write it in the comment section of the Zoom surface. You have a first question? No. François? Yeah.
So thank you for this nice overview. We hope to have the slides, to have time to go into detail. You say, sorry, there is noise. Can you close the microphone? Yes. My question is, you say that in a rare case, you will use the reserve, and you say rare case, just secondary. Yes, replacement reserve. Sorry for the English. You say in case of a rare event. What do you mean by that? I mean, it's an event that happens every week, every year, or it's a real catastrophe. It happens from time to time. The red one.
Usually it would be a few hours a year, so not every week.
Okay.
I think it's approximately 10-ish hours a week, a year. Sorry,
A year.
Yeah. So it is a rare event, but it's still used throughout the year. It's not as rare as, for example, interruptibility service, which is used it was used this year, but hasn't been used before that, before 2021. So this is very, very rare. This one is used throughout the year, but usually towards 10 hours a year.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Maybe it's a very naive question, but let's say we have a research equipment which consumes a lot of energy, a lot. And we say, okay, we are ready to use it, never use it, except, say, 10 days a year. How much money can we make if we are ready to turn it on and off on demand.
Perhaps without a microphone, if it's okay, can you answer on the chat? If it's not okay, how much could you earn by turning on your equipment only 10 days a year, but in the correct days or in the good days? First answer is more. The design of the market is more how much can you earn by an equipment that's working the whole year and that you turn off only 10 days a year or 20 days a year. And for that, I can say something like 40,000 euro per megawatt. That's an order of magnitude. So it's the other way around. Now, turning your equipment only 10 days a year, if it has to run the whole day or the whole 10 days, that's a bit of a pity. But I would tell you, turn it on in July or August. Why? Because the negative peak or the negative price of the electricity that is coming from the duck curve. The duck curve is reflecting the price. It's not reflecting the demand, it's the residual demand, the one that is the normal demand that is highest at noon. But then on top of that, you have PV, and that's leading to dispatchable means not to have to run. So the best thing would be for you to have to run your equipment only 6 hours a day, and these 6 hours should be between 2 in the afternoon and 8 in the evening, or between noon and 6 over sunny days. And in that case, you will be paid to use energy. So that's a second answer. Does that? Lena, you have a question, I think.
So, thank you. So I have one question. So how do you design the incentive for the modifying the user behavior? Because it's kind of impossible to know the requirements of individual consumers, their utilities or their payoffs. So how do you design that? Like, if you have any comment on that, like the mechanism for
we do not design mechanisms.
So,
we or the TSO design mechanisms.
But how do they do? Like, if you have any comments on that?
And they do the design of the mechanism depending on their static need or the need of the grid, not depending on the behavior of the consumer.
Okay.
It's designed by looking at the uncertainty, or by looking at the what is the most critical event in that time frame that can happen, and that's the loss of one production group or two production groups, and then they design the amount of contractualized implicit flexibility in each of their products, the very short-term one, the medium, and the long-term one. And therefore, for example, maybe you had that classification, I'm not sure, about FCR, the need for France, the frequency containment reserve, the need for France is in the order of magnitude, correct me, of 1 gigawatt or a bit less. Perhaps Romain is knowing that.
For France, FCR is almost 500, 600 megawatts, but that comes from an allocation for maximum criteria, being the two biggest plants in the whole continental Europe, which sums up to roughly 3 gigawatts.
So it means two production groups over all Europe are just shedding from the grid. The two biggest being large nuclear power plants, and then AFRR, the automatic frequency containment reserve, is national. It's not a European cooperation mechanism, and this volume for the national basis is defined a few months in advance, it's oscillating between 700, 800 megawatts. So you know that they will be contractualizing in 2 months' time 700 megawatts. So that's how it's designed.
Okay, and so another question on the real-time price signal. So let's say like you have defined the peak price and then the off-peak price, and everyone starts like the consumer starts shifting their loads to the off-peak price or like the low area, and now the peak shifts because everyone is shifting their loads. So then you have to change the price signal again, just to control the behavior. But if you change frequently, it may cause some inconvenience to the user. So do you have any comment on that? Like how do you set the price signal? Like you don't want to change the price signal so frequently, but still you don't want to put stress on the grid.
There are different types of users. The large ones, the industrial ones, they are fully exposed on the spot market. So it means they have a secure part of their energy in long-term contract. And then when they are coming nearer to the real time, the fluctuation in comparison to that bond that they did buy from the supplier, they have to compensate them on their own on the spot market, and they do adapt. The real-time pricing for smaller customers like us is occurring in only a few countries, and of course they have to give a forecast in advance. And anyway, the latest time point at which you have the information is the clearing of the spot price. It's on the day ahead. So on the day before, you know what will be the price of energy, and then in order to balance that again within the day, there are either mechanisms such as the different balancing mechanisms, or there are markets that are emerging that are real time or that are intraday markets where you can put a given capacity for a time slot of 15 minutes that will occur in 1 hour. So these are the retrading for these imbalance. But of course, the suppliers, they take a risk when they are proposing or they are giving you a tariff. Of course, they have a certain margin and they are taking some risk, and that's their job.
Thank you.
So for the sake of staying on time, I would say we move on to the next talk now, but let's thank the two speakers again. And our next speaker will be Diego Herrera Ruiz, who speaks on the integration of renewable energy sources. I shortened the correct.
Yes. So we're back on track. We'll edit that part in the recording, doesn't matter. So as I was saying, see, you would have missed this lovely diagram. It mattered as well. So going to the very basics, what is renewable? According to the UN, it's that renewable energy derived from sources that are not depleted. They can renew before they're completely used, right? And then they come and name a few examples. I'd like to draw your attention to one in particular, which is geothermal, which by definition is us taking advantage of the heat generated by the planet. Now, given our situation, we're a little bit sneaky with that definition and we decide to ignore the part that says natural. Well, our facilities also generate a lot of heat and we can use that, right? Why does this happen? Easy. The science is hot and our researchers are on fire usually. So we have to take advantage of this. It's basically an unlimited resource of heat. And then we can use it, repurpose it, share it, use it around. So The important part of what I'd like to highlight about this is that we can take advantage of the current situations of our facilities. It's one of the few things that, despite the different nature that all of our institutes have, the generation of heat, it tends to be a common denominator of all. We have massive equipment, giant machines that generate a lot. So, well, we can take advantage of that. And of course, there's not a one-size-fits-all kind of solution. Usually the best solution will be something tailor-made for your needs, combining more than one resource. So it's a study that has to be done independently, but of course there's a methodology that can be followed every time to have more or less standard procedures and pretty standard results as well. So now that I've convinced everyone that we want a renewable energy generation system, how can we do it? What do we want for it? Well, the most important part is that we want our system to be relevant and to provide value. Simple. The first thing that we're going to get from it is a reduction in our environmental footprint. Of course, this is very important, but sometimes, and sadly, it's not enough to convince everyone that we want to do this. So what else can we do? Well, the way to make our system provide extra value is first understand how the research infrastructure operates. What happens, right? Let's try to understand what the process is on their everyday life and how can we install our system to provide something extra and help them make their life easier or more effective, right? So in terms of operations, we need to figure out what they're lacking, if they have any sort of deficiency or somewhere where they can improve, and we can add some value over there. It's also very relevant that if we're able to do this, we're going to generate high interest in the people working already at Research Institute. For example, I'm just thinking maybe we can use data center cooling. It's something very important for a lot of people. If we can provide some sort of backup or make sure it's always on, that it's going to be completely reliable and robust, it won't stop, then whoever's working with the data center will also be very interested in that the renewable energy generation system works properly. Not just the system owner or whoever was in charge of the project, but also the people working there. This will also help us identify any kind of mistakes, errors faster, because then people will be directly affected, and there will be more interest in monitoring them closely, right? So the more people that are involved in this, the easier it is to find errors or also get feedback and improve the system that we have. And finally, I think it's always important to improve the public's opinion. And not just saying, oh, we installed this is fantastic, we did a great job. But if we have people monitoring it closely and realizing, oh, this is the benefit that we get from it, we can have hardcore data and we can have actual data sheets, or we can have just numbers to provide backup to our statement. It's like, hey, this system is bringing a lot of value. It helps in not just greenwashing, but it's actually bringing something to the table. So thinking about ESS, this is a diagram of estimations that we have for the operation of our facility at 2 megawatts. So first, when you see this kind of images, it's tricky. The first time I saw this, I wasn't sure where should we start. The first thing I wanted to pick was the accelerator, but then I realized I have to do something simpler. I have to think, okay, which buildings have, so to speak, a low but still consistent and predictable consumption, right? So I think we have 2 or 3 really good candidates right there. But I would immediately choose that one, the offices and the facilities that we have for people working there every day. Why? The schedule is very simple to follow. Usually Monday to Friday, pretty steady. People work there between 7 and 6 in that gap, most of them. We have some colleagues that get there at 10 and never leave, but exceptions. Most of the people have a very, very steady schedule. And then it's something easy we can predict. So we install a system and we connect it there. It's going to be very fast to identify the impact that we have because we know how it works and we know what can we bring to the table. Now, another candidate could be the instruments or even the target building. This could be a possible upgrade. once we see that, oh, it works, or we find some possible errors that we have in the office buildings, then we can move forward to improving our system and helping other areas of the facility. So yes, the implementation part, well, I already mentioned that we need to do a background check and understand how the facility works. Ideally, we will do this since conception. When the facility is being designed, when it's being constructed, our system will be also constructed with it in parallel. Sadly, this doesn't happen all the time. Sometimes the facility is up and running already, they have steady state operations, they already have users, but we want to install this system. So we need to figure out a way of doing it without interrupting them. It has to be done in a seamlessly way or as undetectable as possible. Good options usually is when they shut down. Big facilities shut down 2-3 times a year usually. So we could do that during that time. Another very important thing is to, I said, doing it on site, and by that I mean the installation will be on site. We don't want it remote. We don't want to include the grid all the time. And even if we do it on site, again, we want to connect it for internal consumption. We don't want to include a third party or connect it to the local grid. It's going to make our facility more independent, more reliable, and it's also easier to keep track. Previous experiences say that sometimes when you connect to the grid, there's a lot of information that's lost. The way you measure is not the same way they measure. So keeping track of your system is easier if everything's done in-house. And also you reduce stress from the grid. Sometimes there's no need to put more stress in what's happening and more load. So reducing a little bit, as we heard in our previous talk, could be actually beneficial. And lastly, our goal is to reduce while maintaining performance. In all our facilities, we already have a goal. We have a target that is, we're going to operate in this. This is the performance that we want. So keep that steady and lower our emission or our consumption. Sometimes I know it's very tempting and we get greedy and it's like, oh, we have a bit of extra energy. Let's upgrade and use a little bit more power. Let's run for longer, or let's just pump up the accelerator to 4 megawatts. No, we agree. This is the performance that we want. We stay there. And then if we didn't plan to have an upgrade, we're going to just keep steady and then have a reduction in our emissions. A good example of this in one of our partners, ELI, they already have a solar installation that's working. Their installed capacity is 312 kilowatts. And if I'm not mistaken, this week or last week, they hit like production of 310 or something like that, which was really cool to hear. Some of the characteristics that I'd like to highlight is that it's a scalable installation, modular. So they have independent sections within their installation to keep track of performance in different areas. It's easier to analyze the data and also try new things. If we want to have a couple of prototype devices in a section, we can compare it to the one next to it. Same conditions, control sample in our prototype. So this is fantastic. And also the fact that if it works, you can increase it in size, you can increase the performance, install capacity. And from what I've heard and I've seen as well, it's connected to their entire system. The integration was pretty simple. For what I heard, it went pretty smoothly and pretty fast. And it's also connected to their central generation unit. So it just connects to the whole thing. It's done immediately in the center, so you don't have to have extra steps or extra installations to get used to use the facility. So, well, hopefully once we install this, we're going to get several benefits. I divided them in internal and external. As I've said before, internal will identify systems which can have immediate impact, but also systems of high relevance, like cryogenics. So we don't want cryogenics to stop once they're up and running. So we're not going to power them directly, but we can definitely power the backup system for it to be ready. If something goes wrong, then they don't depend on the grid, they don't depend on a generator, but they also have an extra layer of safety for this system to keep up and running. So that's very important. Otherwise, in certain facilities, this implies 2 or 3 weeks of delays in whatever's going on. Also, it creates a competitive, stable, and predictable consumption. So this helps operations to negotiate rates and tell the city how it's going to work. And this brings us to the external benefits. For the local providers, it will give you a better estimate on how much you're going to use and make sure that the city will not be affected when you're at the highest point of operations. And also, we'll try to compensate for the increase of consumptions in the city. So an example in Sweden, once ESS is fully commissioned and operational, it's estimated to be a 10 to 20% increase of the consumption of the city, which is quite a lot. So if we can bring this number down, it would be fantastic. And now, as promised, a very quick view. I'm not gonna go into a lot of detail how to use these tools. I just want to make sure everyone's aware that they exist. They're free to use, and if you want to dive into them, it shouldn't be that hard to figure them out. So some of the available resources are these ones. I promise I'm not being paid by any of them to give them publicity. One of them was actually recommended by our team here, by Marion. K2Base, I really like the system because then it allows you to draw a solar panel installation right on top of your site. Sometimes this is very hard. It's very hard to size it correctly and know how many modules you would like to have on your facility. So this tool lets you do it immediately. You just pick up the location that you want, then you choose the kind of roof that you want. If you're not sure, go with the default settings. That never fails. It gives you automatically, if you have snow, rain, geographic conditions, and then boom, here's your installation, ready to go and have it up and running in 2 days. That's a lie, and I know this is being recorded, but that's how it feels like. Once you have this is the end result. It'll even give you a bond of all the components that you need for mounting, for installing, so it's actually fantastic. The system advisor model from the National Renewable Energy Laboratory. I intentionally took this screenshot and this other two because I feel like they seem a bit intimidating when you see them. It's a lot of options, a lot of data that you need. It's not that bad. First of all, you just need to select the kind of weather that you want. Most of the data is available for the US. If you're not a big fan, you can get your own data for your site. In my case, I chose this. You can see it's my file for the location in Sweden, and then all the rest of the information is just subtracted from that automatically. If you cannot find this, don't worry. Just choose a place in the US. It's kind of similar to what you expect. Same, and then it should work quite well. The rest of the information is just if you know the configuration that you want, that you know what's the orientation, how you want to place them, great. If not, you can just keep clicking next, and the default values will do it for you. The nice thing about this is that you get some estimates about the whole year, what's the possible production you're going to get for a typical meteorological year, and also they divide it in monthly generation. So it's a pretty sturdy system. It has a lot of information if you want, but if you want to keep it simple, it's possible to do it as well. We are developing our own resource here in-house. Our idea is that if you don't have access to the data or you don't know where to get it, this tool will fetch it directly. That's one of the things we're working on. And it's going to do something similar, analyze the expectation and analyze the production that we're going to get through all this time. All of this has been for solar, but there are other resources for wind. For example, the Wind Atlas, this is powered by the Danish Technical University. They do a great job updating it, taking care of it. You just go there and get your geographic data and historic data, and also take advantage of the data sheets. If you know which device you're going to install, if you know the turbine, the panel, whatever, their data sheet has all the information you might need when it comes to power, sizing, operating conditions. So just go through it, and that's basically all you need. If you want to check any of the resources, the links are there. I think this will be sent to people who are interested. Yeah, that's it. I don't want to take any more of your time, but if you have any questions, please let me.
So let's first give and I want to open the session. We are a little bit late, but the time for questions must be. Is anybody question on it?
We can check the chat in case
Yes.
someone writes.
In the chat there is no question. So to all those online, if you have a question, please write it in the chat. But I now wanted to ask further details on the FlexRICAN tool. When will it be available, and how many people of us are involved?
Well, hopefully by the end of this year, we'll have a version that we are going to share internally. Our first version will focus on solar. So we're going to get all of the geographic data that's relevant for each site and then do the analysis. But the idea and the goal is to have the potential to expand this tool to cover other resources like wind or energy storage, combine them. It'll give you the optimal model for installation. It'll give you an estimate on the financial costs, giving the price of your local grid, giving the also the return of investment, and of course the estimate on how much emissions are you saving and how much you will spend on it as well, making this installation.
Thank you very much. Yes. There's no question in the
yes.
chat?
Yeah. Maybe one question. If I understood properly, your assumption is that the performance of the facility is going to maintain constant. It would be interesting to try to see how, if you are able to modulate the efficiency of the performance. It may be very interesting because the cost of energy depends directly as we saw in previous talk. So why do you choose to maintain the performance of the facility constant?
Because sometimes, or at least the way I was thinking about this is instead of modulating it a little bit for other factors, we sometimes depend on uses. If we have certain uses that need specific experiments, then the way the facility is going to work, I'm thinking precisely of ESS, but maybe ELI works the same way. If someone books a specific week during the year for their experiment, we'll have to do it at that time. We might not be able to postpone it. We'll do our best while scheduling to find the best time based on what we just heard from Energy Pool. But if not, then we at least need to make sure that during that experiment, their performance will be steady. And by that, I mean, it shouldn't go down. We shouldn't underperform because we try to power the accelerator or the target with the wrong source, right? So by keeping it stable is at least making sure that we do not underperform. And once we have that, then it's the part, okay, let's not overuse this. Let's not get a little bit greedy and try to get more out of it because, oh, what if we just emit the same we would have emitted before, but do twice as much? Like, no, let's just try to keep it in the performance that we had before.
So this, of course, this possibly has a very high cost to keep the performance at the minimum level.
No, that's the thing. It doesn't have to be at the minimum level. It has to be what was initially designed for. So, for example, if our facility is designed to be working at 2 megawatts initially, and then there's going to be an upgrade to 5. Whenever we get to 5, right now the plan is to stay there. But then let's say that we successfully implement these systems, and then like, oh, maybe we can reach 7. Like, no, we should stay at 5. I don't know if that answers it.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. François, you have another question?
Yeah, it was a comment concerning the question of Adrien. Because in fact you can add that now the ESS is not fully operational. So I mean the operation has not started. So the question of the planification of the experiments also will be done taking into account these developments. The year planning is not defined. Of course, there is European service and so on, sure, but it could be optimized depending on what will be developed at that time with renewable and recovery energy. Just a comment.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. Can you go back to your slide with the big numbers about which building is consuming how much or?
Yes.
What's the point is I have no idea. It's actually somewhere that you need 100 gigawatt hour of heat in all your building. That's what.
No, that's an estimate of the amount of heat recovered by our facility.
But what is the local heat need?
Oh, that's a great question. Do you know?
Those are the power consumption per year.
Yeah.
And that blue one is the heat that is recovered per year.
Yeah.
And what was the question?
If we know the consumption in Noon.
That's Noon.
800.
I can't.
800 gigawatt. Like so it's about the same.
The heat that is produced or the heat that is recovered?
No, the heat that is produced by the heating district network. And the heat that is produced by ESS
It's,
is
that's the one we
so it's 1/8 of what is needed.
Okay, from what you said that you are interested in recovering locally the heat and not pushing it into the heat, the district heat.
No, the heat, we can put it back into the district. Of course, we use it internally, but then this amount of heat, of course, we send it back to the city. The part of not sending it back is more for the electric grid. The heat we do connect to the network in the city.
And the question was about the heating needs for
the city. So then that's 800.
Hey.
Yeah, internally.
Internally, I think it's actually this is the net that goes out.
Yes,
we have more than we have more that is internally used. But it could be more. He has because he's in charge of the internal operations. So he has a better number internally used, but
I can come back with the figure for you if you want.
Diego is 500. Goes out in terms of waste heat that we recover.
So we are running quite late on schedule. We have a coffee break now, but before that, let's thank Diego once again.
So I'm giving this speech on behalf of the FlexRICAN Consortium. So there is a lot of colleagues involved in this waste heat recovery. You have seen already some example, but we will go first back to basis and to try to explain why it is so important in the actual energy transition. Let's go to definition and basics. So heat recovery, waste heat, is the heat generated during a process but is not used for the process. Then the waste heat is rejected in the surrounding air and water, or water mainly. So it means it is rejected in the environment without any render service. So there is a strange knot, but it has to do somewhere with the development of nuclear plant in France. In France, there is a special vocabulary. It means that waste heat is not called waste heat, it's called fatal heat. So fatal means that you cannot do nothing with it. So it is not an optimistic view, but the things are changing now. And also the vocabulary. 10 years ago, everybody was speaking of fatal heat, and more it's waste heat also in French. So this is a good thing.
It was the same with renewables. They were called fatal energy.
Yeah. So the words are important in this case. So I say back to basis. So we will start with energy definition. So energy is very funny because it's come from ancient Greek and it means activity. So we need energy, we need activity, we need development and so on. We are in a society. It is a quantitative property that is transferred to a body or a physical system, recognizable in the performance of work. This term is very important. and in the form of heat and light. So we see that there is no definition of energy. So energy is defined by its effects. So this is the first thing. So it means that it's a concept, and so it's difficult to understand what it means. So what is very important is that energy, as you know, is a conserved quantity. So the law of conservation of energy states that energy can be converted but not created or destroyed. So it could be disorganized, we will say, but it couldn't be destroyed or created. So this is the law of energy conservation. Just a point on the measurement unit. The official unit is joule, but we are so much in an electrical society, and the way of electricity is increasing for years and years. So it's much more practical to use kilowatt hour, that is the energy that is spent by a heater of 1 kilowatt during 1 hour. So this is, I will use this kind of unit in the rest of my presentation. So what we see, in fact, is finally, this is a very basic name, but it's a very complex concept behind. And people, this is important to know, because somebody says, I don't know anything about energy. But it's normal. I mean, it's not a simple concept. So you can have hours and hours of discussion around this concept. So we need example, and this is the way we'll follow in this presentation. So simple example, we are living in a given society, and since I would say 100 years, we are using such a device, such a process. So this process, unfortunately, is very, very inefficient. So let's give numbers. So you have 10 liters of gasol, doesn't mind, gasol, and so you put that in your engine. If you burn it, you can have, thanks to the chemical energy contained in this product, about 100 kilowatt hour of energy. Okay, you put that in your car, and finally, when you use your car, only 20 kilowatt hour are used for the movement. That is what is called work in this case. So it means as the energy is conserved, 80% goes to the bird. So it means it goes to the bird in which form? In form of heat. So it will be very nice for higher efficiency to be able to increase this number. Unfortunately, thermodynamic laws are against us, but we can also try to recover all this heat. And what is very funny is that the development of car, it's about 150 years of development. And there is about no progress on this side, except for turbo engine, but there are rebound effect. So it means that why? Because the price of energy is so low and seems to be gratis because it was stored a million years ago. And also, it's not so easy to collect this energy as it is dissipated in the surrounding. There is no way to connect it to a centralized network. So really, this is the two things we have to work if we want really to have a way to recover this energy and to use it for later use. So let's now talk about a specific example. Let's apply the law of conservation of energy to high-field magnets. So I am working at the high-field magnet in Grenoble, laboratory in Grenoble. So we are setting high-field magnet. In fact, this is only coils that are we pass high current in this coil, and we want to produce magnetic field. In fact, we put for this electrical energy 100%. We use no gas or so on. We put electricity inside, and there is no work. Everything is transformed in heat. So it means that the searcher that is using the field is not producing any work. So my director don't like that I tell that. So, okay, so production of magnetic fields, there is no movement. So it's static process. There will be a bit of energy at the beginning of the process, but in fact, when you are producing a field, there is no work. So it means that normally we should exploit all these heats for other usage. So in this case, it's very peculiar case. So we have to work to find a solution. So 0% of work, no movement. So what can we do? I told you that there was two problems. So first is that the heat was disseminated, so you have to recover it and recentralize it to be efficient. And this is what is explained in this video. So I will start the presentation with this video that we have made with Frédéric some years ago. It is in French, I have to say, but there is subtitle in English. So I let you, and then we continue after. It's about 2 minutes, 2 minutes and a half. I try to slow down a little bit because it's a bit fast. Okay. We'll continue. So what is interesting in this? So I will go now. Continue with my presentation, but I will take some element of this. So we have seen the difficulties to recover heat. So we need a heating network. This is clear, but there are some constraints, and I will go through these constraints and try to give you some examples that are starting or that are soon already in operation. Sorry, in large-scale infrastructure. So central question was raised in this presentation. Do we produce the heat at the same time that the heating network need it? No. The answer is no. There is always a trade-off somewhere. So there is a compromise, a trade-off to find. And so it means that waste heat recovery is a question of negotiation. It's a technical question, okay, but it's also a question of negotiation. So the second thing is how to manage this temporal mismatch. So there is solution. We can store the heat to use it later. Of course, it costs more investment cost, and we can do planning. So it means to change the way we work, to change the way we do science in a given infrastructure. So just an example for this temporal mismatch. So the case of our I facility 2 years ago. So this is a very specific example, but here what you see on this graph on the top in blue is the consumption, the maximal power that is used at the facility. And you see that there is a very intermittent behavior, but you notice that we have no work until April this year. If we want to use this heat for heating, well, this is too late. I mean, this is a need for the heating. You have a total discrepancy in this year between the need of the heating network and the need of the researcher. it's a worst case scenario, right? It was the worst case here. Okay. So, so for this case, we would have need an interseasonal storage. So are we able to store the heat during 1 year? So it seems crazy, but it exists because it's effective in Nijmegen. So in Nijmegen Highfield facility has a heating network nearby, and they're storing the energy to use it 6 months later. Of course, this is for a long-term mismatch, but for short-term mismatch, we can use replanning and short-term storage. So this is what is under study in the FlexRICAN project for the Grenoble case. Let's go to the example of EMFL. So it's a high magnetic field laboratory, exactly the same, no work. So I mean, energy, electric energy transformed into heat. So the laboratory is located there on the right of the presentation, and you see some blue circle and red circle, and they are representing pits in the ground in order to store water. So cold water is stored at 7 degrees, and warm water is stored at 25 degrees. And then it is connected to this heating network, and it goes in the big university center, and I encourage you to visit Nijmegen. It's a very nice university. So how does it work? So you have deep storage underground, and so I thank France for all this news. There is a very interesting reference, a YouTube reference, describing the system more in detail. I will not put it on the screen now because we have no time. But I mean, it is quite clear the way it works. During wintertime, we use the water that was stored in the aquifer at 25 degrees. Then you have heating pump to go to 45 degrees, let's say roughly. But as you are using heating pump, you are also producing cold water. So it means that the cold that is produced at 7 degrees is re-injected here in the pits. And it will be vice versa for the work during the summer. So it means that you are able to have an interseasonal storage, and that fits the needs of the district. And so this project up to now do not exist in Grenoble. I hope it will happen in the near future. Okay, let's go back to Grenoble. So we are now in the high field laboratory in Grenoble. So you see the place it is located. So we take benefit of the water that comes from the river. We inject the river to the heat exchanger, and then here we have a closed loop of deionized water to cool our magnets. And then again, all the water that is warmed up by the magnet is rejected to the river, so 100%. And there is no recovery. Here, yesterday, the group has visited the project of ESRF, and now the ESRF has a new system in order to recover their wasted heat, but up to now, it's only 5 gigawatt as compared to the 34 gigawatt that are produced. Because they are not connected to the heating network up to now. Perhaps it will come in the future. It will be a nice thing because it will help to have a better rate. Here we have a nuclear reactor, and so it was decided at the beginning that they will not recover the water for safety reasons. It can change in the future. So it means that here on this presqu'île, you have more than 100 gigawatt of lost energy, and it is about 1/8 of the need of the global city. So it's a nice project to consider, I think. So of course, this is an opportunity because we have an historical network, so that's exactly the same size of Lund, of the order of 800 gigawatt per year of heat that is distributed. And of course, as all historical network, it must decarbonize its mix. We have to recall that this network in the past was mainly fed by coal, because the coal was locally produced at La Mure near Grenoble. Of course, there are technical obstacles. I have quote the one of the interseasonal storage. Is it possible in Grenoble? It's not so easy because there's a very dense and fragile aquifer due to the fact that there are two rivers and circulation of water underground. So this is not that easy. Another thing here are political obstacles because as you have seen, we have to have a kind of trade-off. We have to change the way we are doing science to integrate another company, I would say, like the Metropole or the heating network in the thinking. So this is not an easy job, and most of the time, all the projects have political obstacles, as it is quoted there. Okay. If we go a little bit deeper, there is also intraday temporal mismatch. So it is really the case in the case of high field magnets because it's a place where the searcher is defining the consumption of energy. So what you see in blue is in fact the power that is used at the lab. So you see that it's very intermittent, and what you see in red are the needs for the heating. So it is during autumn days, and this is the need of heating. What you remark is that there is a discrepancy in the level, so it means that you have to transfer high flux of energy at each moment, and this is a nightmare. And also you have discrepancy in time. Here there is no field, and you have a big need of heating. So for the solution, we need storage again, but we need also replanning. So an example, then the installation gets more and more complex. Here you have the existing laboratory. It's very simple. You have a magnet, you have a deionized loop here, you have the river loop there, you have a magnet that takes all the electrical power. But then you have to create all these parts because you need storage, because there is temporal mismatch, as you have just seen. But the level of temperature is not that high, so you have to have a heat pump, sorry, it's in French, so heat pump to go to the network, that is a historical network with temperature as high as 85 degrees. So here, that is quite interesting, it's a kind of simulation of a storage that is installed in the installation. It's a simulation, we have no storage, but we are able to, you see, to report this energy some hours after, and then to cover the need of the heating system, thanks to this peak of power. A very inspiring project is the one of Brest, is really what is needed in Grenoble, but it occurs in Brest. So this tower is to heat, it's a reserve of heat to heat the building of the university in the morning. And I encourage you to have a look on this project. You have the link on the presentation too. Of course, this is for the storage, but you can also replan. So this is results that are obtained using Omega. So it's suggestion of replanning, of experiment during the year to have a better corresponding with the need of the network. So this is ongoing work with some people involved in the FlexRICAN project. So I will not go into detail because we have already talked about this example, but the problem is the same at a larger scale at ESS, European Installation Source, now in preparation in Lund, in Sweden. There are some common features. The heating network is about the same as far as the quantity of energy distributed is concerned, and the technical obstacle, so studies are in progress, as it was presented by Diego. Could the district heating network be expanded? Because you have seen that the quantity of energy available is enormous. It's 1/8 of the total energy distributed by the network. Is an interseasonal storage feasible? Could the excess heat be used for absorption cooling in summer? I will not go into details. One thing that has to be said is that today, in these years, we are in a preparatory phase. So the accelerator is not into operation, but still there is an annual consumption already of 34 gigawatt-hour, and already about the third is transferred to the network. So it's a first step, and it has to be continued for the year to come. Of course, this is not a simple problem. This is why I show you the problem of the storage, and we need optimization tools. For this project, we have chosen the Omega tools that is developed here in this school. And this is very interesting because it integrates quite easily the constraints of the different actors. You have understood that the problem of heat recovery is that you are not deciding alone. You have to work together, and this is always difficult, and it leads to a lot of energy also. This system permits to integrate constraint objective in the energy system models, and then we can test different scenarios and propose them to the different stakeholders. So it's very nice pedagogical tool to work together to find a solution to set this kind of valorization process in operation. So to summarize, we have discovered some heat recovery ingredients. We need storage, we need replanning, and this was also the question of Philip, how the research needs are defined. So this is why we need an optimization tool that take into account all these constraints. We know without any judgment. I mean, stakeholders are respectable, and so we have to listen to all people. Of course, to lower the investment cost and gain in efficiency, the heat recovery question must be integrated into the early phases of the construction of the facility. This was not the case at the high field in Grenoble. It was better the case in Nijmegen thanks to active district, I think. It is better the case in USS, but it's not perfect. And yesterday we had a presentation by ISIS, and they are really thinking that at the beginning for an instrument that will be in operation in 2040. And we hope that this work could be useful for this kind of new research infrastructure. So the idea of FlexRICAN is to set recommendations for future research infrastructure, and this will be one of the key output of FlexRICAN. About heating network, I do not say a lot of things, but Europe, you have about 4,000 heating network in Europe. But at the difference of what was presented at the beginning of this session, this is not a uniform market because it is local district heating. And so what is interesting to study heat recovery in research infrastructure is that the research infrastructure are really at the mesoscale between the electrical grid on one side and the local heating network on the other side. So it means that it can act on the two directions and could be a stabilizer of the network, the energy network in Europe. Okay, I will stop there, and if you have any questions, I would be pleased to answer. Try to answer.
Thank you. Please, the floor is open to questions.
Just a small comment about, yes, it's not 800 gigawatt hours.
Sorry?
The heat recovery is 100 gigawatt hours, and that's for 2 megawatt power operation. You said 800.
800, I said for the Lund district heating.
But,
the Lund district heating is distributing 800 gigawatt hour. This was just what I mean.
I'm not aware of that.
Okay. Or you can discuss with your colleague of Grenoble. It's about these people are from the Grenoble heating network. It's the same order of magnitude.
Okay.
I see there are no questions in the chat, but here's a question.
Did you think of other use of heating, like for agricultural, industrial use of the warm water that you have?
On our side, no, because in fact, you know that it's a very dense environment, the Presqu'île, and you have seen the photograph and you know the place. And it's quite difficult to transport it. I mean, there is a heating network existing in Grenoble, and it's distributing heat for heating
temperature. We had discussion in the past to create a swimming pool at the end of but I mean the field is belonging to the university, and this was not the priority. So, it seems to be difficult to have some agriculture application in this place. But I'm not a specialist of that. You can propose that to the next board.
So if there are no further questions, then let's thank François again. And the next and final speaker will be Václav Bernadette on electrical storage.
Okay, so hello, my name is Václav Bernadette, and I'm from ELI ERIC from Czech Republic, and I want to tell you something about battery arrays and especially efficient use of battery arrays. So the objective of this training is to give you some general information, why it matters, how it works, why to think about batteries, but it is not to give you exact parameters of different kinds of batteries. This will be addressed in the FlexRICAN project at the end, so follow on YouTube. So to start with narrowing down this broad subject for our purposes, Energy Pool, a company here from France, conducted a questionnaire to ask questions, what are the problems of the research institutions? So there are, I see, three different parts. One is power quality, that's very important to us from ERIC, grid reliability concerns, and power consumption limits. And what are the benefits? One is to mitigate the defects in the power grid that are coming from outside to local grid. And the other benefit is, as we have heard in previously from Energy Pool, is the flexibility to use energy in different times, for example, for trading or to lower your CO2 emissions. So our motivation is based on the questionnaire, and in the questionnaire it was stated more than 40% of the reasoning is that there is not enough understanding of batteries, so they are not priority to be looked into. So we want to change this by this training. So in this FlexRICAN project, we have split this into two questions. First one is how the outside grid affects inside grid in, for example, research institutions. There's the mitigation of power issues. For example, this is our on phase 2 voltage. So you see there are some blackouts, brownouts, and all these quality issues are problematic because some equipment might be damaged, some equipment might stop, and therefore, for example, stop the experiment when the cooling pump stops. So this is a problem for us. The other way to look at this is from the Energy Pool side or from trading side. When you have a lot of energy, how do you sell it? So you need to look at the markets, see all the services that you can provide, and this was in the presentation before. This is just small recapitulations. There are some primary, secondary, tertiary services that you can participate in, and so what is energy storage? Energy storage is when you store the energy at one time and use it at a different time, and the device that stores this energy is a battery. You're gonna have different kinds of batteries. You have thermal batteries, but I want to talk about the electric batteries, and especially stationary. You have a lot of others like cars, electric cars, or consumer electronics. But for the RIs, the most the use case that we want to talk about is the stationary. But in the future, maybe the cars will be also used for RIs to stabilize the grid. We will see. So there are a lot of services that can be covered by batteries. I will not go into all of them, but you can participate on the peak shaving, peak distribution in time, or for the mitigation of the energy faults, or there are many others, and it depends on the market, where are you in and what are your problems that you want to solve. For example, you can have island and you need to create a local grid and you need to think about it differently. So how to think about this is kind of our point of view. This is the power quality problems, how to think about the problems. Because it's easy to buy a large battery and just plug it in before the research institution, but this might not be the most cost-efficient way to do it. So first of all, you need to know what are your problems. So these are some easy steps to do. So you need to get the data, evaluate it, and then do some risk assessments to see what are really your problems, because not all problems can be solved with some simple solution that might be costly, but there might be different ways that might do the same trick, but for less money. So here I would like to show you the different technologies that are available, or how to prevent some of the problems that you can have. So first one is you have just battery and how you scale it. For the power output or power storage, it can go from when the failure occurs for hours. I don't think there's large batteries, but maybe you can. But also what you can have, that's the problem that we have, the brownouts, is low voltage ride-through. And this is when you have synchronized motors that are running, and the voltage drops. They'll cover the voltage drop for a few milliseconds or hundreds of milliseconds, and this might prevent the brownout to be propagated into your grid and to create problems in your grid. It is not enough to cover blackouts, and it's just for maximum time is seconds. But for some use cases, this is perfect. And you can use, for example, combined heat and power generator. That is beneficial because it lowers your cost of operation, and also it prevents these kind of problems. We have seen it in, this is one of the things that we have already installed in our research institution, and we have some data that shows that it really helps. There are other low voltage ride-through technologies, for example, flywheels. They are used in large servers, but each of these solutions have its problems, so you need to look more into it. And then you have the emergency power supply, that's for blackouts. There is some time it takes for a generator or genset to start up, but then you just add fuel and you can cover this T plus 1 minute, and you don't have as large battery. Okay, so there is also how you connect the battery. So we have online, line interactive, and offline uninterrupted power supplies. Each of them has its advantages, its disadvantages. For example, the most critical equipment should be on online UPS. There's the DC, AC-DC and DC-AC conversion. It creates perfect sine wave, and this is the solution for critical equipment. But for example, if you have some ventilator that's needed, but if there's some inertia, you can just use cheaper offline UPS. When the power drops, it goes from powering from the grid to powering from the battery. There is a delay, but the ventilator doesn't care because it has some inertia, so it will just slow down a bit and then go back up. There are a lot of technologies to store the energy. It depends on multiple factors, and I would like to just talk about the electrochemical ones, especially about the lithium-ion batteries, and I will explain why later. But just to mention hydrogen storage, because it's popular for large storage of hydrogen to use on site. It is not economically feasible because the energy that you put into creating hydrogen and then go back to the electricity, it's like 40%, around 40% effectiveness. So it is not the best solution. When we are talking about the solution, welcome lithium batteries. Lithium batteries are one of the best kind of batteries. There are different type of lithium-ion batteries, but they really have the economy of scale because of the car industry and stuff. So there is a lot of research done, a lot of new, how to say, new materials used, different sizes, tests, longevity improvements. So for most of use cases, lithium-ion batteries are the best solution. They are also getting cheaper because of the mass scale of the usage of them. There are some drawbacks. First and foremost, it's the safety concerns. Then there is the environmental impact that you need to mine the stuff. It's not recycled yet at the scale, and that they are temperature sensitive. So for the safety, there are lots of stuff that has been happening to prevent them from, it's called thermal runaway. That's when it heats up in a way that it catches on fire, and you have seen all the videos of the burning cars. So there are lots of stuff to mitigate it on each step. I would just, I'd like to give one example that I think is funny. In the news, there was stated that some car company is putting exhaust pipes on electric cars, and it is one of the solutions to prevent the flammable gases to concentrate inside the car, so we just put it outside. So there are lots of solutions, and one critical thing is that there needs to be like clear certification of the batteries. What's to tell people, okay, this is a really safe battery, and we have tested it in a standardized way, so you really know that it's safe. Because if you don't have that, then you are just guessing. So for the recycling, we are recycling a lot of materials from the batteries. Sadly, the high-value materials, it's not yet as good. There are different kind of ways how you can recycle the batteries. For example, there is the regeneration of cathodes, but this is a problem that the cathodes are not standardized, so you can use it on all the batteries. So it's the same. Each method has different problems, but it's a large market, so we think that it will be solved in the near future. So this is the prediction of the prices of lithium-ion batteries. If you look, it's like 5 years ago, the price difference is around 2 times larger for the batteries. Maybe here's a better picture. 2015 and 20, for example, it's like a large step down of the price, and the expectations are that in 2 years the price will drop for around another 30%. So the economy of scale is there, and yeah. For the market share, all of these, NCA, LFP, and NMC, are lithium-ion batteries. So it shows you that there are other batteries, there are special use cases, but lithium-ion batteries are the largest market share. There are questions about other types of batteries. For example, in our research institution, we use lead-acid batteries because they are safer, they don't catch fire. But we have bought them 10 years ago, so the lithium-ion batteries were not that advanced. And there are a lot of problems with each type of battery, and so I've tried to summarize what might be interesting to when you are trying to decide which kind of battery you want to use. And that's all from me.
Yes, thank you very much. So we are short in time, but I think there should also be time for questions. Are there any questions from the auditorium? I don't see any. In the chat, there's also none, but for your talk, we had questions upon the legislation process for the Zoom participation. And there were several questions on the dynamic UPS.
Yes. So
yeah, maybe you can give a
dynamic UPS. It's one kind of solution. It's a combination of generator and synchronous motor, and also flywheel, and it's running all the time. So you need to like use energy to keep it up at speed. And when the power drops, the generator starts and it provides energy, uninterrupted energy to the system. There are use cases for this, for example, hospitals or something, but there are a lot of running costs of the system. So it might be a good solution for one thing, but there might be better solutions for other things. So,
is it very big? Is it
yeah,
space?
it's like normal generator plus something. So.
And is it very loud?
Yes, loud, and you have exhaust and everything. So.
There was another question on, it was asked in Czech, so I did not understand it, but what I seem to understand is there was a question on metal hydride batteries.
Yes, I don't know much about this. I would ask Marian for help, but I think it's a niche use case.
The metal hydride batteries are the ones that one still finds in some hybrid vehicles. They replace the nickel cadmium batteries in the past, so that's one evolution. And this is still the type of material you find in the small accumulators you put in the rechargeable phones you have at home and so on. So it's based on nickel and it's based on metal hydride, so no problem from an environmental point of view, but they are sensitive to temperature and they have a kind of memory effect. So it's not a technology that is gaining momentum at the time being. It's being replaced more and more by lithium-ion batteries.
The memory effect means once completely discharged, you don't get back to the...
No, it's more, if you do not discharge it completely regularly, then it does not remember that there still was some capacity to gain. So the next time you just have the capacity available that you've been discharging the time before. So it's when we were young, you remember, we had to discharge fully the phones before recharging them. This is something that is not existing for lithium-ion.
Thank you very much. So when there are no further questions, then let's thank Václav again. And according to the schedule, we would now move on for the next 2 minutes, no, 4 minutes, to the wrap up and question and answer session. So wrapping up, I would say we should use the time that we have. Maybe if anybody of you wants to give some comments right now on the structure of this webinar, if you have any ideas on how we improve to the next training sessions, what we can do better. If you, of course, don't have an idea now, there will be this query sent out to all of us in the next few days. Does anybody have an idea of the improvement? Yes, François.
I was very sensitive to the quality of the energy pool presentation at the beginning, so thank you for that. And now, after that, we are more presented the point of view of the infrastructure, saying that we have constraints that are linked to the fact that we want to collaborate with other people. So in this frame of this project, we are collaborating with Energy Pool and Alpha Laval, so it's quite easy to discuss. But I think that for the next session, we really need to try to involve more, for example, local district heating of Lund or local district of Grenoble, and saying, yes, we understand your problem, but here are our constraints. It will be very fruitful because everybody is imagining that they are strange thinking and so on. No, they have their own interests, but it has to be expressed. It has to be expressed also to be modelized. I mean, we cannot modelize something that we don't know. We can only make an assumption of the way they are thinking and so on. I'm very happy that the two representatives of the heating network in Grenoble participate to this meeting. I hope that we can, in a manner, integrate more the other actor that must be involved in the process in order to go beyond what we have already done. But to have a wider integration of heat recovery, solar plant, and so on, but in a more integrated manner. So, and I hope that there will be results on modelization for the next year, so that we can present, I would say, some scenarios, and in order to make the people react to these scenarios. Today we have no scenarios to propose, so it will be more easy to discuss if we say, let's suppose that we will work like that. How the people from the heating network is reacting, or energy pool is reacting, or other stakeholders can react, it will be very fruitful, I think.
I hope it also goes hand in hand with the further progress of the project itself. Thank you very much. If there are no further questions, then I would declare the session closed. And let's thank all the speakers again.